greatest takeaway I learned from music was, well, one, not to leave money on the table. And two, like to just not think just because you do something creative doesn't mean that you should not like get paid for it or whatever. Arguably, like you should probably get paid more for it because it's like it's a service that comes from like deep within that actually requires a lot of like creative energy and brain power to even like share out with the masses. Like you give a lot of yourself, so you should get something back for that. It's not always necessarily money or whatever, but I think that's really important. When I said tech bias, I think mostly what I was referring to is I didn't go to school, for computer science. I probably would have, but I didn't like math, and so I didn't know if I should do it because I knew it would require a lot of math, and I just wasn't sure if I could do it. For the same reason that I think a lot of women like don't go into tech. It's the whole like nature versus nurture thing or whatever. It's not that we can't do it. It's just that it's the way that you've been set up sometimes in school. So I didn't go to school for that. But like once I got my first job and I interacted like with a lot of that stuff, whether it was reviewing code and then learning how to write it and all that, a little bit later, I realized that I was actually pretty good at it. But I would not have known that, I don't think, were it not for the job. So, I mean, there's a bunch of different pathways, I think, like into, all things that are tech, which is basically everything now, to be honest. There's a couple of techniques that I think are really good. They're almost like no-brainers, but people still don't do them unless you tell them to do them. One is just like most of what innovation has to do with is really surrounded by the idea of design thinking. So it's this idea of empathy, like how do you put yourself in the shoes of the person that you're either providing this product or service or experience to or whatever. You have to be able to do that in order to come up with something that is a good experience for this person. So if the audience that I'm trying to, sell a pair of shoes to is an audience of 70 to 80-year-old women, then I really need to like sit down and start thinking, how do you empathize with that audience? The only way you can do that is, to be honest, like you have to spend time with them. You have to sit down and you have to talk to people, you have to interview them, you have to watch how they do things on a day-to-day basis, things that they like, things that they hate, music that they like foods that they're into. Like it really takes the whole thing. When you don't belong to the specific community that you're trying to, either provide something for or sell something to them or whatever, you have to almost find a way to become part of that community, even if it's for a short period of time, in order to be able to do it in a way that even resembles like being, authentic. Like you have to get to a point where you can empathize and care. Then it's easier to come up with something. And the second way, I think, are like simulation exercises. So especially I think when you're talking about trying to build, product, service, program, experience for, again, a community that you may or may not be a part of, whatever that is, you need to go through a simulation experience of what is it like to be this person, for a day, a week, a month, even a year. Like, and there are great exercises to teach you. Anybody can invest. And I think how you go about doing that, in general, I always say like you should think about things that you're already into or things you already understand. Investing doesn't always require, venture capital amounts of money. Like you don't need to have, a gajillion dollars in order to invest in something. But what is required is, a reasonable amount of knowledge. And however you get that knowledge, it could be that you've always had it because it's something that you understand a lot, that you're really into, or it could be something that you think is interesting that you can get up to speed with very quickly. But yeah, I mean, you can invest as little as hundreds of dollars, like with somebody, who might need it. And that investment might turn into, a good opportunity. It could also, there are reasonable amounts of money to be able to invest in things, whether it be, a business of, a friend or family member that you might know. It could be a startup, like in the early stages. I have an early stage startup myself, so I can say like, you don't always need millions of dollars. Sometimes you need like $5,000 or even like $10,000. So it's really, it might be small increments that, that could provide like opportunities for you to, invest in, and also maybe even have equity in the company that can grow later on. Being in business with friends is great. I will give that with the caveat of the right friends. There are some friends who I love them dearly, but I would never go into business with them. I think everybody brings a very unique skill set, to the table. And just thinking of Motu Vijay for, where we've gotten it so far. John is like great at like closing deals and stuff. Sometimes it's stuff I don't want to deal with. And Jamil is great at like the numbers and all that. So like all the accounting stuff, like he's great at that. Will is great at like the like sort of like the umbrella of watching over everything and promoting stuff. And I'm sort of making sure that like everything is running like a machine and everything looks good. So yeah, I think we all bring a really unique skill set to the table. And I think this is the first time I think where I've actually just worked on a business where it's been like all guys too, which has been another interesting another interesting thing. But it's been cool. It's funny because I think they work at a speed that I'm not quite accustomed to working with sometimes. Usually I like to slow things down a little bit and make them perfect, but this has kind of forced me to speed things up faster, which I think has actually been a really good experience for me, because sometimes I can be so like, no, I cannot talk about it until it's perfect. But this has taught me like, you know what, like it's fine. Like just sometimes you just have to like put stuff out there and become a little bit more comfortable with it, and everything's cool. Okay, so creating lasting impact on our region. One, I think Grand Rapids is a great place for that because it's actually within your reach to be able to do that. We're kind of in the like teenage years like of a city, so there's a lot of growth that's happening, but there's also a lot of growth that you can be a part of. I think we're in a really unique place right now as creatives, entrepreneurs, technologists and all that. Like we're in a really unique place to be able to create a large impact and be part of like the shaping of the way that we think things should be here. And you can't really say that about a lot of cities. Like, I mean, you can't go to New York and do that. Like most things are like so solidified in a city that's like very old like that it becomes harder to do that. But Grand Rapids is in a unique spot. And I think, to be honest, I always joke like with people, I'll be like, Carpe diem, like seriously, seize the day. Like this is the time, because as time goes on, it's going to become more and more difficult to be able to do that. But I think now's the time. Like this is creative's time to be able to really like step in and make, not even just impact from the creative side, but make impact creatively that can also have an impact on the social dynamics around us too. Thank you guys so much for having me.